I think we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm getting a thumbs up from the back of the room. All right. Hello, everybody. Hello. Welcome. Welcome to the afternoon sessions. Everybody caffeined up, carbed up, feeling good? Okay. A little bit of logistics about this. I'm not going to talk the whole time. I actually have a portfolio level exercise. I've been doing this at a couple of different Agile camps and product camps, and I want to introduce it to you. So we're going to spend some time on this. I'm going to talk a little bit. We're going to spend some time on the exercise, and I'm going to talk again. And at the end, if you like the exercise, we're actually using some of the materials that you see on the table. And if you like it, there's going to be little sets of cards for everybody. If you get the deck, you'll be able to use this exercise that we use back in your home office, and then hopefully give me all the good critique so that we can all get better together. So that's the logistics. You're going to give me a little flash when I'm about halfway through so I can get into the exercise, because I get a lot of feedback in the sessions that we want more time on the exercise. So that's good news for me. Less talking, more doing. My name is Julee Bellomo. I'm actually from Tampa now. I actually relocated from Virginia to Tampa. People think that I went there for the weather, but I actually escaped the traffic. Has anybody ever been to Northern Virginia? Yep. Yes, the traffic is just a nightmare. It never ends. I have a bit of an alphabet soup after my name. That just means I'm curious and I take tests. But I do have a lot of experience in this space. I was really fortunate to be in DC when the big names were coming through and Agile started being more than a little bit of a buzzword. And I've moved into innovation and design thinking, but I've always had a foot in the PMO. I came from a project management background because it turned out I wasn't a very good coder. Anybody else relate to that? So I've kept a foot in the PMO because what I do now is going to organizations who want to move from waterfall or a sequential type of an activity, because I actually don't know if anybody's actually really waterfall anymore, and to prepare them for what they want to do with Agile and some of the thinking and the experiments that we have to do, setting up teams, breaking down work. And so who here is somehow responsible for a multi-million-dollar gig? Yeah. Anybody get this? Oh, there's no dates in Agile? Does anybody ever, anybody, and you've got a multi-million-dollar gig, right? You're responsible and accountable. First of all, does anybody know the difference between responsible and accountable? Because I do not. I'm going to figure that out one of these days. But I kept a foot in the PMO because I've done a lot of program management. I've done a lot of Agile program management. And when I'm responsible for a multi-million-dollar gig, I have to be able to talk about some kind of governance. And so this is a topic that's passionate to me. Oh, there's my white pelican, sorry. St. Pete's known for its white pelicans that come from Canada. There's my little bit of trip. That's my party fact for the day. The white pelicans from Canada winter in St. Pete, Florida, just like the Canadians. Any Canadians here? Nice. Well, it's there. It's full. It's a great place for people to winter. So I often will come into organizations and I love to map out their current PMO process. So the last two PMOs, I swear to you, had 44 steps. 44 steps. Got to beat how many steps?
325.
300. You need me. You need me, man. Let me come. Just give me a day. I went to, I was up at Spotify earlier this year. They have a fun little graphic in the stall in the bathroom. And it says how many steps between customer and squad. And I think they try to get to around 4. And what I have found that you can do good portfolio management in about 4 steps. So I'm going to introduce that to you today. It's a very lightweight framework. I'm not suggesting that you go back and create a whole revolution or get a bunch of people fired. But I want to introduce you to some things that will be very complementary to an Agile development process, but still give you some governance from the organizational side, because we're looking for a little bit of that financial rigor and accounting, but with some ability to be flexible and still let the teams have autonomy. So I've just taken Einstein's quote and made it a little simpler. If you can't explain it, you can't sustain it. If you have to do a flow chart for your process, it's probably too complicated, right? So I just want to show you some things. And like every good Agile consultant, you got to come up with your own manifesto, right? There's a marketing one. Anybody reading Agile People, the new HR book? And it has a lot more words. But I'm really trying to find in organization ways to empower people and enable the flow, because that's really what Agile is all about, removing waste and keeping things going. But we've heard a lot today about accountability, about empowering people, and that theme is going to continue here. So I like to talk about portfolio management rather than project management, because we do try to move people towards a product organization. That doesn't mean you don't have a portfolio. A portfolio may be, you may call it things like a value stream, a division, a vertical, a line of business. It's just a portfolio of multiple products. So when I use the term portfolio management, I'm looking for an environment, maybe 450 people, like a value stream size, and you want to start coordinating those efforts at a portfolio level. So when I use the word portfolio, just adapt that in your world to be that sphere of influence that's a little bit similar to that, what I'm describing. I like to say radical collaboration, because if I come up and we have a conversation, that's collaborating, yeah? But radical collaboration is getting the decision makers in the room. And that's a little bit different. And if we can't get them in the room, a physical room, I want to get them in the same psychological room. So I really want to have this unity of collaboration and conversation and converging and diverging on ideas. We have to rely a lot on technology. But I do ask companies to invest in some opportunities where people can come together and really have some radical collaboration. Build that ability to have some diversity of thought and some good conversations in what I call the white space. Right? Go out, have a good evening together. Innovation does not happen between 9 and 5. It happens in the white space. And we need to get people together so that we're rubbing shoulders and we're mashing up ideas. Learning over policing. In the old PMO world, we did a lot of policing. I can't tell you how many times I got really good at nagging people for their reports or their data. Or I'd go behind them in the tool and try to figure out their reports or their data. Or I would do it for them because I am codependent. That's me. But now we want to turn that in an Agile world into ways that we can learn. And not just at a team level in a retrospective. Because teams get really good at understanding what they're doing well and what they want to change. I don't often see those improvements coming back at the organizational level. So even I'll close a big multi-million-dollar program. We have a fantastic retrospective. We've got great opportunities for the organization to change something, but I don't really have a forum to bring it back into the organizational culture. So we want to create that intention where we're literally pausing and having organizational retrospectives and not just at the team or the program level. And then we hear this word a lot, empowerment over enforcing. What does empowerment mean? Anybody feel empowered? I have a little litmus test. I'll say, do you feel empowered? People say yes, no. They'll give me a scale, 1 to 4. People, we love assessments. But what I'll ask is, when you say no, does it stop? If you tell a customer no, or even not yet, codependents in the room unite. If you have to say no or not yet to somebody because it's not a good business decision, do you have to bring all of the, write a dissertation to explain it, bring all the data, or is your no good enough? Are you empowered to be the decision maker in the room? So when I talk about empowerment, I'm talking about putting people in positions and letting them do the things they say they're going to do. Leaving them alone to do the things they say that they're going to do. So that's my litmus test for empowerment over enforcing. So when I talk about those 4 steps, whatever you call it in your organization, I'm just going to break it down into 4 things. So ideation, this process where things are coming in, people are waking up with ideas, or there's a new feature coming in, or a technologist has a great new way to modernize something, or there's a new product idea, any type of ideation that's coming in. That's your first phase. In your company, again, how many steps? 300 steps? There might be many steps behind there, right? But just in terms of phases, there's 1 step. We'll call it ideation. That's all the ways that ideas come into the system. We're putting our systems thinking hat on. And then we have Liftoff. Borrowed this from Diane Larson from her book, Liftoff. Anytime that you have to do project charters, the types of financial reporting or, financial budgeting, things like that. In some organizations, you may have to do that, but that just falls under Liftoff. These are the investment decisions. What are we going to do? Who's going to pay for it? Is it a good idea? We're taking that idea, we're validating it. It's just going to fall under this second phase of liftoff. And then it's in flight. In an Agile team, when something is in flight, that means it's in execution. It's on their board, they've started working on it, and when I call it in flight, that means it is being executed on by the team that's doing the work. Doesn't matter if it's software, if it's HR, if it's legal, it's with a team and they're actually executing on the work. And when I use the term assessment, I'm talking about that organizational assessment that I mentioned a little bit ago. So did we build the right thing? Did it give us the ROI that we talked about? Was it a learning opportunity, right? Not failing learning, right? We're coming back in and having that intentional retrospective at an organizational level. These should seem familiar, not rocket science, right? We're just any number of steps that are behind these go a little higher level in your organization and wrap them up under these 4 phases. So when I put them against here, if you're in one of my workshops, there's some things that we do in good Agile product management that should look familiar. That could fall underneath these as activities. I call these my minimum viable artifacts. From a portfolio perspective, I'm looking for a 1-page product canvas from my product managers or product owners. That way I know that they know what they're going to be building. They have an idea of how they're going to measure it. So we use a lot of Roman Pickler's or Eric Ries's work there. A release plan means that solution architect or technical architect or whoever is involved in quality or distribution, if you're not in software, it might be in your media, your warehousing, somebody has decided who's going to do what when. And when it gets into flight, when the teams are executing really from a portfolio perspective, it's hands off. And then we're coming back with some kind of assessment activities. So I can't get into all of those today. Those are all great workshops to have, and there's good industry standards out there. But in your Agile Maturity Roadmap, these are certainly good expectations for your product management team, product owner team, whatever you want to call them, to be able to deliver this stuff back to a product portfolio management or back to a governance or a steering committee, because it gives them a very lightweight ability to report in on vision, plan, progress, and results. 4 steps, minimum viable artifacts. We're leaving the teams alone to do what they said they're going to do, and we govern that using a very simple Kanban system, the Enterprise Portfolio Kanban. When I use the term Kanban, who in here is familiar with Kanban? It's very easy, in my opinion. I love David Anderson's thought that it's a great change management framework model. It's removes a lot of any resistance to change because we're honoring where we're at. We're not introducing new roles. And I'm just going to elevate what we typically talk about at the team level to what's worked for me at the portfolio level. So as we get into this, just to bring some level setting, I think of Agile as a subset of Lean, Lean as a subset of systems thinking. Do I ruffle any feathers with that? Everybody's still with me? Good. Kanban, Scrum, XP, there might be 30 different frameworks in here. So what I'm talking about is really framework free, and it's complementary for any of those Agile techniques. Doesn't matter what you're doing at the team level. You could even be doing waterfall at the team level. But I'm showing you a way to bring some agility, some business agility into the governance. So an Agile organization wants alignment at that system thinking level. So we're looking for alignment. Are we working on the most valuable things? At that Lean level, we get that, I call it the missing population. If anybody's been in an Agile transformation, we often don't get a lot of time with the managers and the Lean level, the leaders of the space who have to go and execute on Agile delivery. And then at the accountability level, that's when we see teams with daily stand-ups. They're supremely accountable at the team level, right? We will slice and dice the data in their tool all day long because we have it. We don't necessarily have data up at the higher levels. And that's what I try to encourage people is to move out of just Agile thinking, business Agile thinking, and into Lean thinking if you're at that leadership level, and into systems thinking if you're at the executive level. Because it takes some changes at the organizational level in order to really empower the people below. If you're in a hierarchical system, you need to let them find ways to empower them so that when they say no, it means no. And that's very difficult. We don't want the no buts, right? The highest paid person in the room, the more important value stream. Somebody comes in and overturns something. If we overturn things, then it can get very difficult to help empower those person to make those very tough decisions. So we still expect flexibility. Very tough for some Agile teams. They want to have a plan and stick to it, but we're really expecting flexibility. At that lean layer, we're looking for managers to provide sustainability. There's a lot of us in the room, I know from talking to people earlier in the day, that could be in positions to help control work in progress, to help be the person to say that says no or not yet. And at the highest level, we're looking for ways to scale, because people don't scale. Teams scale. For me, in an Agile initiative, building sustainable teams is the non-negotiable. I literally can get them only so far in their portfolio process. If they won't go to sustainable teams, I have to walk away. Because otherwise, they're just in a vendor this big complicated spreadsheet of who's working on what, when, and what it costs, and when it's going to be done. And there's no agility in that, right? I could sell them a really beautiful, complex Excel that my company, who's a software vendor, provider uses to source all of their people. But that's not what we're looking for from an Agile organization. When we start to translate those same layers back over into the Agile world, we get really good at this. I think I mentioned that. How many people here work in these layers with release planning, sprint planning, or daily planning? Any coaches or scrum masters, product owners in the room, delivery managers, tech leads, solutions architects? The teams get super good at this, and they'll typically hit a glass ceiling. Hopefully, the businesses are really good at this. Not always. Sometimes we have to look bottom up for what the business strategy is. If I can see what they're investing in, I can show them what their business strategy is. But what's missing is the portfolio management layer. And this is when the business strategy and the delivery strategy are connected with the product strategy. So how many of you went to Don's session earlier today, the 3 V's, vision, value, validation? And he'll say this, if you don't fill this in with something, it will get filled in, right? So we're looking for portfolio management to tie that together, and that's where our executive Kanban starts to show that alignment, shows the accountability, but it also shows the holistic view of what we're working on in a portfolio. So people will come to me and they have a vision, because it's Agile, that they have to force rank their work. And they think it looks like this. Everybody gets in a room, or they send a flurry of emails, and we have to force rank all of these big projects, and somebody's down at the bottom and they never get the love. Does that ever happen in your organization? There's typically, compliance or some kind of something is at the top. Sales typically has a very strong voice because of revenue. HR can sneak in there sometimes if they've got a good, engaging, employee engagement activity, or if there's some cultural scandal in social media, they get a little more love. But it's not necessarily about force ranking the big things. What we're trying to teach our product management and our delivery teams to do is break those big things up into small things that can be done. And this is how we get business agility at the lower level, at the quarter, right, at the fiscal quarter. We're still letting them go, do what they need to do at the Agile level, whether they're working in 2-week increments or 4-week increments, whatever that looks like. What this view is more at the quarterly level. So we're getting people in the room, we're having this conversation, we're breaking big stuff down into small stuff, and then we're looking for a short horizon. They may still be talking about their year-long roadmap, but we're asking them to look at maybe 3 months. I don't try to fight with a 3-year roadmap or even a 1-year roadmap. We have to have some capacity versus demand numbers. There's staffing numbers, right? So I want to build a bridge there, but I want them to start focusing on the 3-month horizon. What are the things that we're going to physically do in the next 3 months that we know are real valuable things? And then build teams, build those sustainable teams to get that work done. And what do you think I hear when I ask for teams to get this work done? This is what I hear, some summary of, we don't have enough people. I don't have enough people. There's too much work to be done. Does anybody work in an organization where you might hear we don't have enough people? And so this is what I say to them. Not enough people or too much work? Because really, this is the essence. When we're talking about scalability and sustainability, it really does go back to saying no and not yet, and getting alignment on what is the most valuable thing. So when we talk about that, really getting some understanding of what is the most valuable thing, not the most ROI, not the tightest deadline, right? What is the thing that we're going to invest in? It starts to change the conversation. But I want them to really think about this as an investment. Now, I've worked with organizations who have a compliance issue going on. They might be paying a couple of thousand, maybe $3,000 or $4,000 a day for a compliance issue. But the people they need to resolve that compliance issue are working on something that's going to give them $50,000 of revenue in the next 2 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever that looks like. So now they're having an investment decision at a portfolio level. The CFO is not particularly happy until she understands that from the ROI perspective, there's a much more valuable initiative going on. Right? Even at a program level, I might have a deadline. If I'm in creative services, there's lots of deadlines. In sales, there's lots of deadlines. But if I can see from a portfolio perspective where the other revenue and cost savings are, I'm more apt to understand what we're investing in. And we're pretending that there is no phase 2. Just like a story in an Agile team, where this is just, Agile on steroids, we're looking for independent, valuable, small increments at the portfolio level so that we can get done with a quarter, the market's changed, somebody's come up with a new idea, and then we're able to deliver on it. So in a typical Kanban board at a portfolio level, if you're familiar with Kanban, it can seem pretty simple. There's our phases across the top. It can get more complicated. I prefer to start simple in my organization, and whatever steps are behind those 4 phases, we just get them to roll up behind it so that they start thinking about if they have a bunch of funding activities that comes under planning. They might have different steering committees or things that have to be in play. But I'm just raising the conversation to get some clarity and a little bit of vocabulary of what we're trying to do at that portfolio level. Very, very simple. In a warehousing client, I might have to add some things for distribution or delivery, right? If I'm in a creative services, I might have to do something up front with more UX or design thinking. So you can certainly expand on this, but I do encourage you to go high level and try to get clarity on what those simplest phases are.
How would you use this in a portfolio where this portfolio here doesn't represent the entire company, for example, or represents maybe a subset of the company?
You can. I've done it for whole companies. Yep, $50 billion global companies. It gets very, very high level. But it is just like Kanban works at a team level. It gives that holistic view of what it looks like at that highest level. I mean, I will come into an organization. I'm just working with actually a steel mill, and they're losing money. They've gone from $22 billion to $6 billion in a couple of years. They're losing money. And when we look at their entire portfolio, there's one revenue initiative. But yet there's a $500,000 human resources project, I'll call it a project for lack of a better term, for some employee engagement and an applicant tracking system. Give me an Excel. I can track your applicants. If you're losing that kind of money, I'll sit out the door of your exit criteria because they're not hiring people. Right? We don't need to invest in $500,000 if we're losing money and people. We need to find ways to get innovation and revenue in the door. And by looking at things holistically at that organizational and lean level, we can see the initiatives that can compete against each other and might be balancing each other out. Was also working with a global HR firm. Literally one initiative is adding staff and another initiative is removing staff. We're just fighting against each other. Spent 3 years with Carfax. Right, had a massive data center move planned. Anybody been involved in a data center move? Not without risk, lots of fun. Massive data center move planned at the same time that marketing had a massive new feature being developed. What do you think that risk conversation looked like when they started to understand at that multi-layer, multi-portfolio layer, what these huge initiatives were doing against each other? Now, the issue is getting those really high level. So what goes on the board you have to practice that conversation. You have to keep them going higher level. You have to keep them thinking about what are the biggest initiatives that they have in the shop that's appropriate for that layer. Does that help in any way?
Yeah, I would say I'm saying that's 10% of what I'm looking at.
Yeah, that's a great point. You may even have to just scale it down to just the strategic initiatives instead of the entire thing.
Just look at the strategic initiatives. So
yeah.
Using the strategic initiatives for this and you looking at those weighting factors, for example. You can see that.
Yeah. So what I would propose when we're talking about enabling people and empowering flow, that there's one gate. Once the company has decided to invest on something, those people are empowered to move forward, and if it turns out it's not a good idea on their first round, their first experiment, their first sprint, that they have the empowerment to kill it. That they don't have to keep coming back to the committee and asking for more funding or doing more stuff, because we're closing stuff in a quarter. We're closing stuff in a quarter. You can see what we're delivering on. So if you get drunk tonight and don't remember anything else I say, I promise you the best step towards agility is small batch sizes. You know, I love data, so I've been trying to slice and dice State of the Union or State of the Agile reports and all those things. And what is that? The big study. Can't think of it right now. I look for different data points, and it's getting harder and harder to prove how great and shiny Agile is when you compare it against waterfall. Because in the waterfall world, what are they doing? They're doing smaller projects. Smaller projects will still reap better progress than big ones. It just does. So if you're in an environment where this is so pie in the sky that you can't see any of this working, your best first step towards agility is to start breaking those big initiatives down into small things that you can get done and that are independent, so that you have the ability to help change the organization at the quarter, at the business quarter if you need to, and you can even look one business quarter ahead if you're really in a complex world. So very much like a Kanban, it just moves through to running 3 months. We typically work with a quarterly planning, but we're looking for this constant flow of stuff coming through. And in assessment, we are looking to see, not I launched something or I delivered something, but at 3 months, at 6 months, at 9 months, at a year, did it do the things I thought it was going to do? So we're looking for that assessment to be tracked some way. Might not be on the same Kanban board, but we're looking for that to be an intentional step in the portfolio process, which means somebody has to be responsible for that. Now, typically, product managers are busy planning new stuff. So it's very difficult to be intentional about that.
How about carryovers, right? Carryover items from the previous board?
Yeah, in the beginning, you're going to have some things that linger. So this is a Kanban board. It's not necessarily going to cut you off. It's not a sprint necessarily. It's going to linger. But you get better and better at breaking those things up. And you're not going to stop working, right? You might have some really short items that finish up. But overall, I can mostly get a good trend going with about 80% of the projects closing within the quarter. So I still have some initiatives happening in portfolios that are going to start at the end of one quarter and move into the next. But I'm looking for trends, right? So Carfax and Marriott, we got both of their delivery cycles down to about 40 days. 40 days from idea all the way to execution. Not delivery cycle, not what the teams did, but from idea all the way out. That's pretty fluid, to wake up with an idea, get it out there, get something out there in front of the market. My goal is to not trip on my own purse. How does work flow through the system? I love to have a good old-fashioned analog portfolio board right up on the wall. I like everybody to see that. Kind of to your point, there might be some judicious ones depending on what you're working on, but really everybody loves visibility. If I have a global organization or a remote organization, sure, we put this in a tool, but it's really valuable to have this sitting outside somebody's office where they can see it, where they can see the blocks and they can see the progress, particularly if they're high level. And then one item on the portfolio at the executive level might be mini items on a team board, might be mini boards. Right? So one item breaks down into many things. So at the portfolio level, you're going to be judicious about what you're showing there. They should be strategic things. Just like on the team board, we don't put things like code reviews or the stuff that we do as part of our work. On the enterprise level, we're looking for those strategic things that are important to have visibility on. For me, it takes 3 or 4 cycles to work with people, and I listen to their conversations and I find out the types of information that they're talking about to see if it's important enough to put on the card on the board. Because we all know the real estate on those cards can be small. And they'll typically say, well, it's very important I know who's paying for this. Like, okay, we'll put the executive sponsor on there. They never talk about it again. It's probably not important, right? We can track that in a tool, but we don't necessarily have to show that on a board. The data center move I was telling you about, it was on bright peak stickies. In the war room, we had, I don't know, maybe 5 to 7 different teams, all in a room about this size. But when you came in and you looked around the room, you could see the data center work on everybody's board. Because we're human, we have this peripheral vision. And so that whoever's interested in that data center move could see the action on every single board and get a holistic view. So still had this at the highest level, but just walked into the war room to see what it looked like on the multiple boards that the teams were working on. Colors are your friends. You can use visual indicators. If you're interested in stuff like this, I have a handout that I can send to you. You can email me. I will send it to you. This is an example of one. I'm from Tampa. Is anybody familiar with Valpak? Get little coupons in the mail? Yeah. So Valpak has been very generous in Tampa, advertising some of their journey. And Tampa is full of B2B businesses. It's a lot of hospitality, but also financial or healthcare. And so we can't always take pictures of their boards. But luckily, we have a picture of Valpak's board. And so you can see the colors there. Those are by verticals. So in the beginning, it starts with different colors, maybe for finance or for HR, for marketing or for digital. And then as it goes forward, they're prioritized against each other. And those colors are meaningful when you walk around the building because those colors are reflected on the team boards. They've got swim lanes reflecting customer delighters, revenue up, cost savings down, or infrastructure. That's a little target there. The top hats mean those are the organizational strategic initiatives. Everything else has to move before they move. If you're having a conflict with resources, talent, deadlines, anything at all, if it's an organizational strategic initiative, everybody knows that up front. There does not have to be a meeting about it. Things move to accommodate those. And you can see it's not on everything. What I love about this is that we have a funnel that's getting smaller and smaller. This, you can't see this, but this is the build execute lane. So somewhere we're saying not yet. Somewhere we're saying no. And that is what we do here. We celebrate the kills. We literally celebrate the killed ideas. Because we want to show that culture of it's okay to say no, it's okay to kill an idea, it's okay to be going along somewhere and say, this is no longer viable, and back off it. And so we celebrate that as much as we celebrate the things that are in execution. So if you're interested, I've got a little handout on that. I'm happy to send it to you. I think the best way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing. I am from Florida. We do love Walt. So I'm going to wrap up a little bit here, and then we're going to get into our exercise. The very first thing that you want to do, just like with the team Kanban at an enterprise level, is make the work visible. Have those conversations about what is viable at that level. Identify your cues and bottlenecks. I was working for a healthcare company, and I think I was using the safe trick with the little strings with my blocks. Sent all kinds of very eloquent emails. Practically did an interpretive dance. Could not get any attention. Pulled my board over with my 12 red strings going to one person who was the block right in front of the CIO's office. Pushed my board over. How fast was it before I got those blocks removed? Like within 24 hours, right? No matter what I was trying to do through written communication, seeing all of those strings going to one bottleneck had more of a visual impact than anything else that I could do. And he got right on it, and he removed it. Talk a lot about this as you go through, what goes on the board, not the menial stuff, but the strategic stuff, the things that's important. Get the leadership team to collaborate on a design. Don't give them a formula. Listen to the conversation and find out what's valuable for them. And then measure outcomes, not activities. So has anybody been in a kitchen like this, like a Subway or like a Chipotle? This is actually called Fresh Kitchen. So when I walked in, I'm expecting this organic food. They have this great, Yelp reviews, organic food, and all of these ingredients are transparent, and you know what you're getting, and they've sourced from the neighborhood and all this stuff. But I saw about 30 people in front of me, and I almost turned around and left. And then I saw this sign. Oh, so you know what I did. I was eating in like 4.5 minutes with my custom organic, pesticide-free, clearly labeled, transparent ingredients, right? So I had to find out how they did that. And I went back the next day and I knocked on the door, and turned out the regional manager was there and the store manager. They must have been having some kind of party. And I said, how did you do this? And he said, trial and error. We measure everything. But in the end, they can measure all of this. They can measure if we have enough capacity. Do we have enough chicken and mushrooms and carrots? Are the right things in season? Do we have the right skills training? Do these people know their ingredients? They spend 3 days in training. They really invest in their people. Do I care about any of that? I only care about this. I've been promised something. I'm expecting that. They got me with this, and I stayed. Now, I go back. It's only for research. I promise it's only research. And to date, he says their longest time is 6 minutes and 14 seconds. So they're still measuring. And he says, in this business, we change or we die. And they put initiatives out there. They don't give $500 rewards. They get like a free juice. It's like an $8 juice, though. It's really good juice. They might get a ticket for their family to come and eat if they've got a good idea. They bring secret shoppers through. They're constantly measuring to see if they're delivering on expectations. And what happens in a restaurant? You know your assessment, right? Because we'll leave. If they don't provide on the promise that they've given us, we will leave. And then implement those feedback loops. In a nutshell, anybody been in an airport bathroom lately? I do not have any idea how this works because I am not touching that thing. But I love the idea, and it made a great picture. But Weight Watchers is doing the same thing with their meeting rooms, putting special technology and agendas out there. So find some ways to get some organizational feedback loops in there. All right, how's our time? We're going to move into our exercise.
We're doing okay. We've got about 20 minutes.
Perfect. Okay. So on your table, I think the hardest thing about this is getting that alignment. People work really well in their own verticals. If I'm working with sales, I'm working in marketing, they can prioritize their stuff pretty well. But the difficulty comes when we have to prioritize against each other. Has anybody ever had that experience? Sales against marketing, against HR, against legal? At Carfax, we called it the Thunderdome. Anybody remember Mad Max, the jousting? Yes, it was friendly Thunderdome. It took several months. It took several iterations to get in a room and kind of hammer out and talk about business value, not deadlines, right? Not deadlines, but business value, and not necessarily ROI. As I get to say this now, you can't be an Uber. You have to take care of your cultural initiatives as well. So I've done a little mashup of a couple of activities. On your table, you have 9 enterprise portfolio items. Those are the cards on your table. Like I said, if you like this exercise at the end of it, you can pick up cards. We're going to work in your small groups at your tables to determine the order for the top 3 features. So out of 9, I'm going to walk you through how to get to the top 3. There's multiple rounds. So stick with me. I'm going to give you some. It's going to be very fast-paced. I'll give you some instructions for each round. And then you're going to make decisions and discuss each round as a small group so that you can get to your top 3 in about 20 minutes. So the first thing you're going to do as a group, you're going to order your cards by monetary value only, left to right. So on these cards, you'll have to spend some time consuming them. Just lay them out, have people read them. And there's some monetary information on the bottom of each one. Some of them are revenue and some of them are cost savings. Some of them are unknown. And you're just going to try to do it by the monetary information on there only. And just stick it on your first thing where you think they go from left to right. That's all you're doing, is you're lining them up left to right, using only the money on the bottom of the cards. All right? We'll spend about 5 minutes.
All right, I'll read it here. I'll move data centers to cloud. The savings is $1.2 million yearly. And Smart chat, cost to develop is $320K, savings is $78K.
Yes,
For monetary value, do we look at savings minus cost or just savings?
both. Anything that has to do with numbers. Yep.
So this is 500K spend, so savings is 100K per year, but the spend is $500,000.
Got about 1 more minute. All right, let's check in a little bit. So we're gonna continue to work with them. Let me get your attention real quick. Yeah, so I need a whistle. Let's check in up here real quick. There's no right or wrong to these answers, but there's some obvious ones, right? How many people, what do you have as your highest one? Smart sales? Anybody have moved the data centers to the cloud? Second highest? What about some low ones? Unknown. The unknowns, because we're doing by money only, the unknowns are low, right? Anybody have heartburn over those? No. What's like maybe your third and your fourth? Applicant tracking. What else? The mobile responsive. So it doesn't take a whole lot of information. If you are familiar with product canvases, you'll see this is the type of information. We try to get down to a one-pager. You don't need 45 pages of data to make a decision. You just need the right data to make decisions.
Those two are some of the hardest numbers to get, by the way.
Yes, it takes true business analysis, but it is the missing ingredient. When you want to talk about portfolio management, you have to start talking numbers. My favorite textbook is called How to Measure Anything. Has anybody ever heard of this book? Get the book, get the workbook, do your homework. It has changed my conversations at the portfolio level. And essentially it works with the idea that if you can't measure it, it's not worth doing. but it literally will give you formulas. It will literally give you steps, particularly on things that don't have immediate ROI. So it's helped me as a person coming in to have that conversation, to change my questions and pull out more information, because we usually have more data than we think. Hubbard is his last name. Yep. So now whoever has a pen at the table, all you're going to do is mark really quickly from 1 to 9 in the order that you have them. Just if you've got a pen, just write where the dollar sign is, just write from 1 to 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way over to 9. Now, typically when you start having this conversation and you've got these types of high levels, you can see they're not any one product, right? You can do the same exercise at a product level, but I was trying to get more diverse items at that highest level. So now all you're going to do is you're going to move them. You're going to keep them in the same order, 1 to 9. And all you're going to do is move them vertically. Now we're going to start talking about value. I want you to think about the three little symbols on your board. If it's something that has to do with improving culture or customer satisfaction, if it has to do with people, the heart sign, you might move it up, regardless of money. So I'll use the easy one. Employee engagement probably goes up, right? Basic things are things that you have to do that are compliance, that are upgrades or infrastructure. You have to do these things to stay in business. They're not sexy, but they're important. They're going to go down. Now, sometimes in a product lifestyle, your basics or your delighters can actually become basics, yeah? So this might prompt some conversations at your table. We don't have to solve those conversations, but just pay attention to them, and we're going to check in about 2 minutes. Just move them up or down based on how you think it should go. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Just let me know when you want me to hand out the cards.
Okay, we can just move them to the back. There's no answer. Just move them how you think. These are not any kind of answers. Hopefully you have one on each layer.
Basics, maybe from the operational.
That's operational. Yeah.
And you guys, for the next round, you may have to move to the back on the next round. Yeah, it's hanging right down.
Dashboard for sales.
So how are we doing? What kind of conversations is this prompting?
Who's our customer?
Say again?
Who's our customer?
Who's your customer? Are you having that conversation? Who's our customer? Do you think that if you're having this conversation in real life, you might be having conversations about what is our business strategy? Who is our customer? Right? Now we're looking at everything, and we're just talking about delighters and basics and that performance line. We're just moving some numbers. So this prompts some conversations. How about those two unknowns? What kind of conversations are coming out around the two unknowns? Anything?
Neither one of our unknowns we measured as a must-have.
Are they delighters? Would they improve employee or customer relationships?
One's a performance one.
Great.
But if it's something that's like a must-have, like you would probably know the cost of it.
You could probably do more analysis and get it, right?
I'm still going to get you on this though. That this cost of development savings is a really hard thing to do.
Yes, it really is.
Yes. So what's your first step in doing that?
Well, trying to understand what it is that they want to get out of it. What is the cost of something when I'm not doing it?
Well, let's
right?
start with cost of development.
Okay.
We don't have to talk about it now if you don't want to, but we can talk later.
So here on lease accounting, for them, they think that they were actually going to save people's jobs. That was the basis of their business case on this one.
I mean, the expense for $500,000.
Yeah.
All
All right, so let's move on to the next thing. What kind of conversations have you had? Anybody have an interesting conversation at their table trying to determine these three things?
Well, so we just had something get brought up, like at this stage, you don't have to necessarily be totally accurate about where you're putting everything, because you can still move things, right?
Yes, that's such a great point.
Perfect at this stage.
Everybody hear that?
Yeah.
You don't have to be perfect. You want to get enough data to start having these conversations. It's just like a business, it's just like a user story at an Agile team level. You want to get started with the conversation. If you can't even have a conversation, then you don't have enough data. This is when you need to go get your business analyst, get a little bit more data, go a little further. And you're going to refine and refine and refine. But you're starting to talk about what are our investments, and are we taking care of our customers? Are we taking care of our employees? Are they getting left out because we only care about ROI?
Yeah, and we had an interesting observation as our business leadership team working with the same features and functions had a different distribution than their business leaders.
Of course.
Which is real life.
Yes. Yeah. How valuable it is when we talk about that radical collaboration to get them all in the same conversation. Because now when we go to this next step, I'm going to understand why. So there's no answer to this. This is just an example when you get the deck. You should have some kind of scattering of things, how they look. Go ahead and put the little symbol on your card. So you should have a number and a symbol on your card because you're going to move to the next template. We have about 6 minutes, so we're going to go fast. All right, when you're ready, all you're going to do, this is the simplest part. It feels complicated, but it's going to be simple. You guys ready? Let me get everybody's attention. Everybody should have their number and their symbol on their cards, yeah? Okay. You're going to use your other template, and all you're going to do is you're going to translate them over. If you've got a high number, depending on which vertical, whether it's the delighter, the star, the basic, and it's pretty high, you're going to now have conversations about where it goes on this template. This is the Kano model. I've just done a little edits to it to have the conversation at the portfolio level. We're going to do this for about 3 minutes. It's not for real. You might spend all day. This might be a couple of 2-hour sessions with your leadership, but I'm just giving you a flavor for it. Yeah, you can even put them, whatever you want. You're translating from this template over here. So you've got your symbols on there, right?
Okay.
So your hearts will go on the heart line, and you're going to talk about whether it goes low or high.
Okay.
You're taking everything into account, meaning that my customer will be satisfied and fulfilled if it's on this side, and unsatisfied and unfulfilled if it's over there.
Okay.
Like my employees or my customers here, well, my basic needs will be fulfilled or unsatisfied. So you're just using that to get them on this scale somewhere.
So we're not really plotting this.
Not necessarily. Now we're looking at it in a third dimension.
Okay.
I like that.
Are we doing this by dollar value? There's no dollar
Nope,
value.
this is a third dimension. So now you've tracked that, you know that, but now you're just using these 3 dimensions and you're talking about, will my customers or my employees be more delighted, more satisfied, or more unfulfilled? ranking them
So
against
having
each
nothing
other.
to do with these numbers from before.
Nope.
Reading the project.
Yep. Yep, it's a third dimension.
So even though the savings are unknown, we could still put it.
Yes, exactly.
And it's better for your customers overall, right? So,
Yeah, that would go there.
So now you're looking at this in a third dimension. You're not going by the money. You're not look. You can look at the money, but it's not the only determinator. So you guys are good? Yes. You're good? Oh. Okay.
We're not just going by money, we're rating it by what? What we think?
All of that, yes. All of the value, all together.
Fulfilled versus fulfilled.
Yes.
How do we think about that? Or
Well,
unsatisfied versus satisfied?
Yeah, so would your customers be more satisfied or less satisfied? More fulfilled
did
or
that.
less fulfilled? Correct.
I feel you.
Will your basic
Satisfied or
needs be
unsatisfied?
fulfilled or unfulfilled? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are any of these current state or are these future looking?
These should be future looking.
Both of them are
Yes.
satisfied and fulfilled.
Yes. Good point. That's a good
How do you
question.
distinguish those two?
It's more of the conversation. I don't know that you could quantify it unless you've done some kind of surveys. You certainly could do surveys,
So
but
are we trying to think in the mind of like us as the companies, their customers, or us as the company?
you're the company.
I'm the company.
Yeah.
And this
Will
is
my
what's best for
customers be delighted? Will my employees be delighted?
Okay.
Right.
Thinking about employees, because I was like, customers
Yes.
don't care about my employees.
Right. But as a portfolio, am I taking care of my customers and my people? You guys good? Yeah.
Well, one of the ladies was asking where she could get more material. About.
Yeah. Well, they're going to get the deck with the cards and everything.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
A little trouble figuring out kind of like where along the line to put these
It's the conversation. Now you're having the conversation about what's more valuable, what's less valuable. The money might have a say, but it doesn't have to be about money. This is a third dimension. This is taking away from money, taking away from just applying it all against the Kano model, which is a third dimension. It's just a new way of looking at it. All right, how are we doing? Can I get everybody's attention? There's never enough time for this. Hopefully whet your appetites. So there's no right answers, but were you getting different conversations when you started to apply it against the Kano model? And that is what we want. So now those employee engagements or those cultural ones that don't have money on them, now they might have a higher ranking in terms of value because we're looking at the holistic value. Yeah? It should bring out more conversations, different conversations. Now, I will propose that, this is my hypothesis, that when you get done with this conversation, you can take these things in your upper right quadrant and move them over, and you have your short-term horizon. That's not failed me yet. I want to challenge you guys to go back and do this with your organization, give me feedback on how this worked for you. What I love to see is a balanced portfolio, that we have some delighters, some money makers, some savings, and some basics, and we're taking care of all dimensions. So that's my hypothesis, that you can do this, you can get to your short horizon, get everybody happy, and now everybody's been involved in the conversation about business value, and it didn't take a calculus algorithm to do it. All right. This deck will be available. You can take the cards with you. You can email me for more materials. I'd love to get some feedback on how it works for you.
So, but you talked about the deck is
Yes.
Do you have any other material that
I have, you're going to